We've dragged him in from his sick bed. He doesn't get off that easily, and we are very lucky to have him joining us live to tell us more. Correspondent Michael Schaefer.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Yes, well, the Cronulla Riots were a blight on our nation's history, as you mentioned. You know, they were a blight on nation's history, along with the White Australia policy, Tony Abbott's prime ministership, and Meatloaf's performance at the 2011 AFL Grand Final. So, terrible things in our nation's history. But last week marked the 10-year anniversary of the riots, where white Australians began attacking the following list of people. Not that list, that list. The riots began after this text message was sent to people throughout the area.
Sunday, every Aussie in the Shire get down to North Cronulla to help support Leb and Wog Bashing Day.
Gee, the last time a Shire needed protection, it was being attacked by orcs, which actually is a pretty fair comparison now that you think about it. At the riots, white Australians began attacking anyone who looked Middle Eastern, which seemed to surprise some of those who attended, like this guy, Mick.
To know what was going to happen that day was too hard to predict.
Too hard to predict? If only that text message saying, "Let's go bash Lebs and Wogs," was a bit more clear. Mick's the kind of guy who would watch Titanic and be surprised when the ship sinks at the end. Even when two Middle Eastern boys were attacked by the mob, the rioters still tried to justify their actions.
It did shock me in the park when them two boys got attacked, but on the TV it made out as if they were poor innocent little kids, like they were.
Typical left-wing media bias, am I right? Portraying two poor innocent kids as two poor innocent kids. The Cronulla Riots showed us that nobody wants to admit they're racist, but
Nothing against them, but they're always down there to cause fights.
The classic, "I'm not racist, but I'm about to be."
Like, not racist, but everyone was saying, like, "Oh, all you wogs go back to where you came from."
Very racist. If the Cronulla Riots taught us anything, it's that people often don't even realise that they're being racist. We saw it again this year when Adam Goodes threw an imaginary spear that hurt a lot of real racist feelings, like those of former footballer and current idiot Sam Newman.
Goodes, could I just give him some advice? I know he'd love to take some advice from me. Sure he would.
All right, Adam, as a white man, let me explain to you what racism is.
Contrary to opinion, people are not booing you, Adam, because you're an Aboriginal. They're booing you because you're acting like a jerk.
Sam, if people were booed for being jerks, nobody would ever be able to hear a word of what you say. And of course, Sam Newman wasn't the only grumpy old white man in denial. So too was Alan Jones.
Then he became Australian of the Year and tells us that we're all racists. Every time he speaks, Australia's a racist nation.
Alan Jones actually has a point. People don't like being called racists, especially the racists. In failing to recognise our own prejudices, in the last decade we've seen the continual rise of Islamophobia spurred on by politicians. Earlier this year, Cory Bernardi led a Senate inquiry into whether halal foods funded terrorism. I'm not sure if Cory Bernardi was the right man for this inquiry. He recently tweeted this quote, but that quote was not from Voltaire. It's from a guy called Kevin Alfred Strom, a convicted neo-Nazi and pedophile. Pictured here looking very much like a pedophile. The point being that if Cory Bernardi couldn't identify the source of that quote, he's not the man to identify the source of terror funds. To nobody's surprise, Bernardi's inquiry showed no link between halal certification and terrorism, which was lucky, because even if there was a link, Australians still wouldn't give up our 3 a.m. kebabs. If we lose our kebabs, the terrorists have already won. Which I think is a quote from Voltaire, actually. Yeah, that's right, it is, yeah. It's not just Bernardi whipping up Islamophobia. Last week, Tony Abbott made this sweeping comment about Islam.
Islam has never had a reformation, an enlightenment.
He has a point. The Liberal Party recently underwent a reformation and it has never looked better, can I just say? Now, one of the most vocal Islamophobes in Parliament is Jackie Lambie, who is so paranoid about Sharia law that she made sure the lamb in her surname was not halal. Sharia law is Islamic religious law, not to be confused with Shakira law, which states that one's hips must never lie. Jackie Lambie is very scared of Sharia law, but she doesn't know what it is.
What do you understand Sharia law to mean?
Well, I think when it comes to Sharia law, you know, to me, it obviously involves terrorism.
Jackie Lambie's response to a question she doesn't understand is to say, obviously it involves terrorism. Incidentally, did a bit of research. Here is a copy of Lambie's Year 8 maths exam. Yeah, whenever in doubt, always go for C. That's a tip for you kids. Lambie then offered this advice to people wanting to learn more about Sharia law.
If people want more detail on this law, my advice is to go and Google Sharia.
Very good advice. If you want to understand something, you just Google it. I Googled Jackie Lambie and this is what came up. So, Google is pretty spot on. This kind of anti-Islamic rhetoric from Bernardi, Abbott and Lambie has led to the rise of anti-Islamic rallies, where Islamophobes protest against things like the burqa, without seeing the irony. One anti-Islamic group that has risen to prominence is the United Patriots Front, whose members have about as much diversity as Tony Abbott's cabinet, and who also adopt the Tony Abbott more is more approach to flags. Leading up to a rally in the Victorian town of Bendigo, one of the group's leaders, Sherman Burgess, shared his excitement with this video.
Bendigo rally, yeah!
He beat the crap out of that imaginary terrorist, and he dodged Adam Goods' spear. Last week, on the 10-year anniversary of the Cronulla Riots, another anti-Islamic group called the Party for Freedom planned to hold a rally at Cronulla.
Just having a look at the area that we'll be holding a memorial in 2 weeks' time. Make sure that you come down here. We need thousands of Aussies down here to respect those men that stood up 10 years ago defending their suburb.
Yeah, let's create a memorial to the bravery of those 5,000 Australians who overcame all odds to defeat 2 Middle Eastern boys. If anyone's bravery should be memorialised, it's those people who suffered through Meatloaf's 2011 AFL Grand Final performance. Lest we forget. Look, the rise of Islamophobia shows how little has changed since the Cronulla Riots. We have to recognise our own prejudices and those of our politicians. And if these anti-Islamic groups have taught me anything, it's that a poorly shot video is a great way of sending a message.
Don't be prejudiced. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael Schaefer. We need to take a short break. On the other side, we're going to be talking organ donation with a very special guest. We'll see you soon.